Hey, it's 104. You're listening to The House with Craig and Mitch. Our special guest right now, the Dirty Dutchman. This segment, this interview with Dutch Mantell is brought to you by our good friend George Williamson. He is the owner of Williamson Motor Company on Nettleton Avenue, just east of Stadium Boulevard. He has a huge selection of pre-owned vehicles. He has the best service department in town. It's Dutch Mantell's favorite automobile dealership. When Dutch Mantell's in Jonesboro, he shops at Williamson Motor Company. And we're glad to have Williamson as a sponsor at 103.9 The Game. We're also glad to have our special guest today. It's an honor to have him. He is one of the most influential men in the history of professional wrestling. He has wrestled in front of sellout crowds all over the world, Mitchell, from the Mid-South Coliseum to Madison Square Garden, from the Omni in Atlanta to the Staples Center in Los Angeles, from Puerto Rico to Japan, from a building in Berlin where Hitler once gave his final solution speech, to the Earl Bell Center in Jonesboro, where Lester Groves gave numerous speeches that were every bit as passionate as Hitler's. This guy's a wrestler, a writer, a booker, and the author of one of the best wrestling books you'll ever read. Our special guest today is arguably the greatest pure athlete to ever come out of Oil Trough, Texas. Here he is, the Dirty Dutchman, Dutch Mantell. Dutch, welcome to the show.
Well, I'm glad to be here. Hey, after that introduction, I might as well wrap it up and take it home. What a great introduction. I need to get you to Vegas.
Well, hey, man, it's a great introduction because you're a great man. And I want to say, first of all, on behalf of our radio station here in Jonesboro, a sincere thanks to you, Dutch, because you're a Vietnam veteran, and we want to say thank you for your service to our country in Vietnam. In my opinion, you're a true American hero, and we really appreciate you serving our country.
Well, I appreciate that. I think I served in Vietnam, and when I came back, I don't think, and a lot of guys out there will agree with me that was during that era that we never really got the recognition that we really deserved, and got kind of treated badly, but. Hey, we went on with our lives, and I was glad to do it. And I'm gonna tell you what, the U.S. Army probably turned me in a whole different direction. It showed me that there was a whole world out there to go see. And when I saw that, I didn't stop at the Army. When I got out, then I went to see the world, and I did it all through professional wrestling. And I've been lucky in a lot of ways. I got to see a lot of places, like you said, that I would not ordinarily have seen. Travel the world and gotten paid for it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the book you're talking about is A World According to Dutch, and it was a labor of love for me to write that book because I'd had these stories in my head for so long.
Mm-hmm. And
I went to Puerto Rico last fall, and I sat down, and I was sitting out there on the beach, and the Caribbean is beautiful in September, October, November. I sat down, and I wrote a 272-page book, or that's what ended up, as 272 pages. I wrote that whole thing in about 5 weeks.
Wow.
Because I sat down and I would sit on the beach during the day, and you've heard of Ernest Hemingway when he did the Old Man in the Sea.
Yes.
Well, I did the Dutch Man in the Sea. That's what I did. And I would sit out there on the beach, and I would, in my head, I would say, I'm going to write this story tonight. And I would go in there, and I'm a little bit like Stephen King. I had diarrhea of the keyboard, and I would just write and write and write and write, and then I had two guys. One guy's Mark James, who lives, I think, in Mason, Tennessee. He was one of my editors. And Rick Gross, who used to work for the paper here in Nashville, Murfreesboro, where I live now. And those guys were my two editors. And when I got it done, I said I was going to have it out by Christmas, and nobody believed me. We actually started editing and formatting on December the 1st, and it went live online December the 14th.
Wow.
Which was they did a great job.
Yeah.
And I've had a lot of comments on the book. It's performed very well,
mm-hmm.
and I tell the story. I'm on Amazon now.
Mm-hmm.
On Amazon, to me, Amazon is where they sell books for like Stephen King, and John Gresham, and J.K. Rowling, or whatever her name is, that did the Harry Potter stuff. I mean, serious authors.
Right.
And all of a sudden, Dutch Mantell is on the same website selling a book. With those guys, which I considered it, and to write a book, that people enjoy and will actually pay for and enjoy it, to me was a humbling experience.
Well,
the only bad comment I got on the book was that it ended.
Wow, that's the
Somebody
truth.
said, You remember Randy Hales?
Yes, he's from Jonesboro.
Randy Hales, actually, he bought the book. He got the book through me. You can get an autographed copy through me, and I'll just I'll get this out of the way.
Sure.
If anybody wants an autographed copy of this book, you can get it, Dirty Dutch Mantell with 2 L's at gmail.com, and I'll take, payment through PayPal, and I'll sign the book, autograph it, and ship it to you. But that's the way Randy got the book, and he wrote me yesterday. He said he was mad and sad at the same time. And I didn't ask him why, because he continued his email to me. And he said that he was mad because the book ended.
Mm-hmm.
And he said he enjoyed it. He enjoyed it that much. And I'll go back now. It was a humbling experience, and I enjoyed every bit of it.
Yes, well, I was one of the many that bought the book. I bought it as soon as it went on sale, and I loved it. I appreciate your integrity in the book, Dutch. In the very first chapter, you say that your book is 100% true if you don't count the lies you tell. That's
if you discount. It's only got a 100% margin of error.
You said in the first chapter that you actually started learning how to fight as a kid on the count of your birth name. Hey, explain that to us. What is your birth name? What is your real name, and what does that name mean when it's translated to Old Gaelic?
I forgot what I wrote now, but it's an Irish name. It's Keown.
Yeah.
Which, if you just look at it phonetically, it looks like Keown.
Right.
But it's really pronounced Cowan. And people said, they would make cow, and you big fat cow, and and that's I'm kids, just kids.
Sure.
And that's how I ended up started fighting. And in Old Gaelic, I think I said it means like trailer park or trailer park trash, or something like that.
You actually said when it's translated into Old Gaelic, it means butt face.
Okay, that's what I said.
Yeah. So of course
that's why I started fighting at a young age.
No doubt that would cause some fights on the playground, man. Dutch Mantell, he is our special guest here in the house with Craig and Mitch. Dutch, I know that you've worked in all the major promotions from WWE to WCW to TNA, but around here, the most popular wrestling of all time is old school Memphis wrestling from back in the territorial days. How important is Memphis to the history of professional wrestling?
Well, I think Memphis made it. I think you look at what they're doing now and what they did in the 90s and the Attitude Era and all that, to me, it all originated out of Memphis. To me, it's where it started. And I've heard guys come up to me, and now I'm going to be all over the place in this interview. When I talk Memphis wrestling, I like to just let it roll out. But Memphis, now is having a rebirth thanks to YouTube. And people write me all the time, man, I can't believe the stuff you guys did in Memphis. Oh, my God. What it's done, it's withstood the test of time. Mm-hmm. And the guys that we had there, to me, this is what's wrong with the wrestling today, the WWE. I'm not saying anything's wrong with it, but I'm saying to me, as a fan, they all look the same to me. They look so homogenized. They all look like they're juniors or in college, all the new guys. And you don't have the characters. Where are your Abdullah the Butchers? Where are your Stan Hansons? Where are your Bruiser Bodys? Your Kings, the Jerry Lawlers, and Dundees, and the Dirty Dutches. Where are those guys?
Right.
They're not there. That's what made wrestling what it was, because it was characters, and it was a comic book come to life, is what it was.
Sure.
And I think, as a fan, the fans in Memphis, Jonesboro, Arkansas, Mississippi, that era, and all over even up to Nashville and Louisville and Evansville, wherever that tape played, I think they were the luckiest wrestling fans of all. Because you didn't get that stuff up there when you watched an old WW. They had an extra W in there in the old days. It was WWWF. And you didn't get it down in Florida was pretty good, but none of it compared to Memphis. Even if you take the success of ECW with Paul Heyman, where do you think he learned all that stuff? Mm-hmm. He didn't just make it up, just walking the streets of Philadelphia. He came to Memphis and watched it.
Right.
He watched Eddie Gilbert, and he watched Jerry Lawler, and he watched me and Dundee and Jerry Jarrett. He watched all that stuff, and all he did, he took what he learned in Memphis and he took it back to Philadelphia in that area, it was virgin to the style, and he made it. He made it.
I believe it was
one time a kid was telling me, "Oh man, ECW," and I have and I respect everything they did. Mm-hmm. But I told him, I said, let me tell you something about Philadelphia and Memphis and ECW. I said, listen, how big is Philadelphia? I don't know. I said, well, it's about 5 million people. How big is Memphis? He said, I don't know. I said, I'll tell you what, at the time, it's about 400,000 or 500,000 people. And I said, how often did ECW run? He said, once a month. I said, how many people did they draw? He said, maybe 1,000. I said, okay. Memphis used to run every Monday night, 52 weeks a year, and draw anywhere from 7,000 to 10,000 people a week.
Wow.
Well, dude, I didn't know that. I said, well, there's a lot of things you don't know, but don't come around telling me that DCW was, the end-all, be-all of it. I said, it all started down in Memphis. And I am glad, excuse me, I am glad that I was a part of that.
Well,
because to me, in the book, I talk about the Andy Kaufman saga.
Mm-hmm.
One of the greatest scenarios I have ever seen in professional wrestling, and the only one probably that compares better than that was, of course, Stone Cold Steve Austin and Vince McMahon. It ran for 2 or 3 years. What a great story! What a great base, and to me, it captivated fans. It kept you tuned in, and you didn't know what was going to happen. That to me is the beauty of watching wrestling.
Yes, sir.
And Memphis, to me, at the time, 1980 from 1980 to 84, and with 82 right in the middle.
Mm-hmm.
82 was their golden year,
mm-hmm.
I think. And I don't think, and people have asked me sometimes, they say, do you think that era will ever come back? I said, no, it's not going to come back. It
mm-hmm.
will never come back. It's gone. It's gone forever.
Right.
So the sooner you realize that and appreciate, and that's why YouTube does so well with the wrestling videos.
Right.
You look at wrestling videos on YouTube, it's about half wrestling videos. I don't know what it is about wrestling, but it just captivates people. Wrestling done right.
Yeah.
Wrestling done right is a beautiful thing to see.
No doubt. It resonates with people.
Yeah, and it's an art, and I think it's an art that's being lost.
Yes. We're talking
and
with,
I don't know if it's going to be lost, but I don't think it's as good as it used to be.
Sure. We're talking with Dutch Mantell. Dutch, you were an important part of the Memphis territory. As a kid, I grew up here in Jonesboro. I used to watch it every Saturday morning. And one of the greatest feuds in Memphis wrestling history is, without a doubt, your feud with Jerry the King Lawler. Now, Dutch, Lawler seems like a nice enough guy. Why couldn't you get along with him?
Because he's a cheating bastard.
No, come on.
Let me tell you a little side story here, a little bit off topic. Lawler and I have the same birthday.
Lawler and you have the same birthday? Same
year. We were born on the same day, the same year, and end up, I was probably in I was about 30 years old then when me and Lawler had our feud. So was he.
Mm-hmm.
But that was, to me, how ironic that could be, right?
Extremely ironic.
And I remember the thing with, and in my book, I tell the whole story about the build-up to the Lawler feud, and he had gotten hurt, and I had both titles, and I mean, it was just something that the fans, they were just drawn to,
mm-hmm.
because you know how Lawler does an interview? He does it pretty serious sometimes, and
sure.
So do I. Yeah, you never heard me scream on the interview, because when I got mad, I got kind of quiet. I actually do that in real life. When I get mad, I don't scream and holler. I actually get quieter. And the matches we had, and I was watching it last night. Somebody sent me, these tapes in Memphis. See, nobody really owns these tapes. Like the Florida tapes, they were sold to WWE. They were sold to Vince McMahon. Okay,
mm-hmm.
I think Mike Graham saw. And the Texas tapes, I think they were sold. The only 2 tapes of the regional territories that haven't been sold are Mid-South out of Oklahoma and Louisiana with Bill Watts, and the Memphis tapes. But the Memphis tapes, nobody has a clear owner. There's no clear title to who owns those tapes. Anyway, I was watching it last night, and Lawler and I, it was a unique experience, and something that people still remember to this day. They come up and still ask me about that.
Oh, it's incredible.
Because I mean, it's withstood the test of time.
Mm-hmm.
Lawler and I've watched Lawler since he began. I'm sure he's watched me too. But I will say one thing about Jerry Lawler. I have nothing but total respect for him, because in the annals of the wrestling business, Jerry Lawler is probably one of the smartest guys that I've ever seen. And he took and he was one of the best in the ring. No
Definitely.
Matter what he did. I mean, if you really think back about this business, if we used to run wrestling in Memphis 52 weeks a year. Every Monday night we were there. If you went and used that same business model today, if WWE came in and ran Memphis this Monday, they'd sell out
mm-hmm.
at the FedEx Forum or whatever it is. They'd sell out 20,000 people.
Mm-hmm.
Let them come back in the next Monday. They draw about 10,000.
Mm-hmm.
Let them come back in the next Monday. They'd be at 5, and after 4 weeks, they'd be down to 2,000 people. We used to go in there and do 10,000 people a week.
Yes.
And it took talent, and it took, and if you looked at that Memphis roster, it was packed from top to bottom.
No doubt about it. We're talking
Those
with
guys were good.
We're talking with Dutch Mantell. Dutch, I sure hope you can hang around for one more segment with us at least.
I'll do it.
Well, when we come back, I'd like to hear some stories from Dutch. This book is just packed with hilarious stories. I'm going to ask you.
I got a couple for you.
Outstanding. And I also want to ask you about a couple of the stars in the WWF or WWE that you've had a huge impact on, the Undertaker and Stone Cold Steve Austin. I want to hear about your impact on them. So sit tight with us out there. We got Dutch Mantell. When we come back, you're not going to want to miss the rest of this interview. Dutch Mantell's our special guest here on 103.9 The Game. It's 123. You're listening to The House with Craig and Mitch on 103.9 The Game. Our special interview with the Dirty Dutchman, Dutch Mantell, is brought to you by Williamson Motor Company. They're on Nettleton Avenue, just about a block east of Stadium Boulevard. They got a special going right now, a complete oil service. For $19.99, you will not beat that deal. Best service in town, and like I said earlier, it's Dutch Mantell's favorite automobile dealership in Jonesboro. Am I lying about that, Dirty Dutchman?
Brother, I'll go there. Every time I go run through there, I got to go there and buy a car.
Motor Company.
I just can't stay away from the place.
That's
hey,
exactly.
man, I'm enjoying your show. I really am. I like your commercials. They're entertaining. It's great.
Well, thank you.
Those are all thanks to our fantastic producer, the Big Donkey, Rob Butler. He does a great job around this place.
He sure does. He makes us sound good. And thank you for that compliment, Dutch. I'm holding up. Are you listening to us online, watching us online?
Am I doing it? No, I'm outside.
Oh, okay.
I'm outside because my wife said, "Get the heck out of the house when you do the interview. I don't want to hear that. I don't want to hear you talk about that crap no more."
I understand.
I go outside.
I understand. So. She's probably tired of it. Well, I'm holding up the picture of your book, The World According to Dutch. Memphis wrestling fans, get on Amazon.com, buy this book as soon as you can. Great book. One of the funniest books I've ever read. And
can I tell you can go and read my blog. I got a blog up. It's at DutchMantell.com, and then if you want to order it off Amazon, you can do it there.
Yes.
But if you want a personally autographed copy, you just go to dirtydutchmantell@gmail.com.
Cool.
And it's almost the same price as Amazon, just maybe a little more, but I'll sign it for you and give you a couple of pictures, and it's well worth it.
Definitely. Hey, forget the Amazon stuff. It's say that email address one more time, please, Dutch.
Dirty Dutch Mantell with 2 L's @gmail.com.
DirtyDutchMantell@gmail.com. Send him an email, and he will autograph a copy of this book and send it to you. 270 some odd pages of great stories and insights into the world of professional wrestling. I've asked the Dirty Dutchman if he would tell a story about one of the most colorful individuals to ever get inside the squared circle. Oh yeah, the Macho Man Randy Savage versus a police dog? Dirty Dutchman.
Yeah.
What in the world?
Years ago, we both started about the same time, and just get some people up on what Savage is doing. His father just passed away, and I gave my condolences to the family. Angelo was his father. Great guy, did 6,033 sit-ups one time or whatever he did. He was a Guinness Book of World Records. And he just got married about 10 days ago, so he was I'm glad he's happy. But Savage, when I first met him, he was just perfecting the Macho Man character. But he didn't perfect it, he lived it. Because after a while, Savage, you could see him at 12 o'clock at night, and he was, oh, yeah. And then if you saw him at 6 o'clock in the morning, 6 o'clock in the afternoon, he was always in Macho Man. I used to call it Macho Man mode, but finally he just morphed into the whole character. Macho Man, if you saw him on the street, was the same as if you saw him on television. So one night I had wrestled him. We used to wrestle in Nashville on Wednesday nights, and in my book I talk about Waffle House. A lot of people up north and out west, they don't know what Waffle House is. I have to kind of explain it to them. But everybody, of course, in Jonesboro in this area, they know what Waffle Houses are. You got your plate glass. You can see everybody in the restaurant. Well, he went in there one night, and I don't know if he was drinking or what he was doing, but let's just say he felt good. So he was sitting there, and he was giving his order, and some guy walked through the door and said, "Hey, everybody, I just got married." And they was giving him all kind of congratulations, which took the waitress away from Savage's order for a second, which he didn't like. And he just couldn't leave it alone. And Savage said, "Who gives an F?" You know what I mean?
Yes.
And the guy says, he looked at him, and now he'd embarrassed the guy because the guy knew everybody in the Waffle House, and nobody was in there but Savage and just the waitresses and this cowboy-type guy who walked in who just got married. And the guy said, "Well, you better give a whatever." And he said, "Well, I don't." And finally the guy says, well, and now he's embarrassed. Now he's got to either stand up for his girl or stand up for his own dignity. So he walks over and he says, well, we got a problem? And Savage said, I don't know, dude, do we? And before they knew it, all of a sudden the fight broke out. They started fighting around, and boom, boom, and they was walling in front of the jukebox, and they was calling the police, and everything's going on. So the guy reached in his pocket, he pulled out a knife. So Savage saw that. He hopped over the counter. He grabs the knife. Now he comes back, and now the guys standing in the booths of the Waffle House, they're swinging at each other.
Wow.
And finally somebody said, hey, we've called the cops, we've called the cops. So the guy runs out, the cowboy. And Savage looked down in the book, and he actually told me this story 2 or 3 days later. He looked down, and he didn't have a knife. He had a butter knife in his hand. He couldn't have cut him. He couldn't even scratch him with it. So finally Savage says, oh, yeah. Now he's all excited. He's all agitated. And the guy he was with, he actually ran out the door. When the cowboy ran out the door, he ran out too. But he wouldn't calm down. So finally when the police got there, and they all knew Savage. Mm-hmm. At the time, we was on like Channel 2 or Channel 4, and, that was before the Titans got into town. That was before, like in Memphis, while the wrestlers were such big stars, that was before the Grizzlies were in town. We were the biggest sports stars in the town.
Sure.
So everybody knew us, and even the cops who walk in, they knew Randy. And they said, okay, Randy, calm down. But they couldn't calm him down because he's the macho man. No, he's not going to. In his head, he had it that the guy who really started this whole thing had run out the door, and they should be spending their precious time chasing that guy down, not him. So they tried to tell him to calm down. He wouldn't calm down. And so finally one guy said, okay, let's cuff him. Let's take him in. He's out of control. Well, that's when the fight started. They couldn't get the cuffs on him. And they was trying to cuff him, and Savage was fighting him. I wasn't hitting him, but they just couldn't control him because here's this wild man.
Sure.
You can imagine.
Oh,
See, when you went by on TV and you saw Randy Savage, you're going to stay for a second because you don't know if he's just completely insane or he's just he just cracked to the hilt. And that was way before crack even come along. He just, oh yeah. I used to tell him, I said, man, you never do a whole interview. You just do half an interview. Because he repeats everything twice. He says, oh, yeah, Dutch Mantell. Oh, yeah, Dutch Mantell. He'd say everything. He'd say everything twice. And then you could say, well, I think he's talking about Dutch Mantell. I don't know. Maybe it's just me. I don't know. But finally, they couldn't get him under control. Finally, they pulled out the mace. They tried to mace him. He ducked. One cop hit the other cop in the eyes with a mace. Now you got one cop down.
Oh, man.
And then Savage, I think, picked up a baton that the guy dropped. Now you see the other police cars screaming in there. Wow, wow, wow. And by this time, they had so many police cars there. Of course, people that was going down the street, they stopped to see what the heck's going on. And they had a great view because of all the windows in the Waffle House. And it ended up with Savage almost fighting at least eight cops, 8 Nashville cops, and they couldn't get him. So finally, they said, well, call the dog.
Oh, gosh.
And in come the big police dog. And Savage saw the dog, and they said, Randy, we're going to tell you. And they called him Randy. They didn't call him Savage. They called him Randy like he was a friend.
Well, he's a celebrity.
Because some of those guys actually worked the matches as security that night. This was the third shift that was there, and they said, Randy, calm down. He wouldn't do it. They turned the dog loose. Well, buddy, that was a big, bad mistake. Because that dog ripped him a new one, buddy. And they finally got him cuffed. And I didn't know anything about this till Saturday morning because somebody said, we wrestled Thursday night. Savage wasn't there. Nobody said why. Friday night, nobody said nothing. So Saturday morning, I actually read about it in the paper. That's how long it took to hit the paper. And it says that professional wrestling wrestler Randy Macho Man Savage apparently didn't get enough fighting Wednesday night when he wrestled Dutch Mantell at the Fairgrounds Arena. So they said he had to continue the fight with the Nashville Police Department at the Waffle House on Harding Place. It was a great write-up. I remember that day I called him. I said, buddy, you're all over the papers. Oh, what are they saying? Oh, God. He got all excited. And so I remember that night we was in Chattanooga, and I said, are you okay? He said, oh, man, I'm sore. Look at this. And he had trunks on, and he pulled his trunk down just over his hip there, and, man, that police dog had ripped him like a 9-inch gash.
Wow.
He had some stitches in it. It really tore him up.
Now, did the Macho Man get any offense in at all on this dog?
Well, he kicked the dog.
He did get a kick in.
Oh, he kicked the dog, and then that dog just had him.
Yeah. Wow.
And, of course, when a dog gets on you, I'm sure you're going to turn your attention to getting the dog off of you, which gave the other cops time to to get in there and handcuff him. But while they were handcuffing him, that's when that dog was doing the damage on him.
Yeah, well, because if the Macho Man could have made it up like on top of a table and come down with the elbow on the dog, the Macho Man,
it'd been over.
It'd have been over. It'd have been over for that dog.
Oh yeah,
man, that is a hilarious story in this book, and I appreciate you telling it, Dutchman. I want to honor your time. I told you we'd take about 30 minutes. Before we let you go, I want to ask you, in good grief, there's so much. Can we have you back on sometime?
Sure.
Because your old buddy Rodney Elwood, he's
that son of a.
Oh, look out now!
Man, I'm gonna come over there and I'm.
Yeah, you owe him.
He's a good guy. He's a good guy.
Well, he's got like 8 or 10 questions for me to ask you, and I'm just not going to be able to. But I would like for you to address one guy, probably the biggest star in modern wrestling history. Stone Cold Steve Austin. There would be no Stone Cold without the influence of Dutch Mantell. Before we let you go, would you please tell us about your background, your history, your influence on the Texas Rattlesnake, Steve Austin?
Well, I was booking Memphis, and he was wrestling out of Dallas, Texas, and at the time that Jerry Jarrett, who owned Memphis, he had a partnership or an ownership stake in the Dallas promotion. And he had sent, he liked Steve Austin, who was Steve Williams at the time, and he actually sent him to Memphis. But he made one error. He didn't tell me he was coming. And Bill Dundee walked in there and he said, "Hey, you know this guy's coming out?" I said, "Who's coming?" He said, "Some guy from Dallas." I said, "Well, I hadn't heard nothing about it." He said, "Well, better do something back. He's gonna be here." I said, "All right, so fine." And this is well documented in the book. And I'm standing there running around trying to get the show ready to run at the Mid-South. And this was way past the glory years in the WWF. It was still WWF. They were still strong, and they kind of took over the country at the time. But I remember, like it was yesterday, Steve Austin walking in that dressing room, and he talks just like he does now. And he introduced himself, and I said, "Okay, kid, you're on first," or I think he was on first that night, "and you're wrestling so-and-so, and what's your name?" He said, "Well, my name's Steve Williams." I said, "Well, it ain't going to be Steve Williams tonight." He said, "What do you mean?" I said, "Well, they already got a Steve Williams." He said, "Who?" I said, "Well, it's Dr. Death Steve Williams. You can't have 2 Steve Williams. That's like having 2 Willie Nelsons or 2 Waylon Jennings or, 2 Madonnas. You can't have 2 of them."
Right.
He said, "Well, that's my name." I said, "Well, I don't give a damn what your name is. It's not going to be Steve Williams tonight, so think of a name." So I walked away. I give him like 15 minutes. I come back in 15 minutes. "You got a name?" "No." I said, "All right, kid, keep thinking. I'm going to be back." I come back again. "You got a name?" "No." I said, "Well, all right, I'll be back. Think." I came back the 3rd time, and I said, "You got a name?" And he gave me like that 1,000-yard stare. That's a term we used to use in Vietnam when the guy's kind of out of it. He's looking way past you. He's looking out on the horizon. That's what we called a 1,000-yard stare, because he was just, they were gone. They weren't there. So I said, and I did what bookers have to do sometimes for guys. You got to think for them. So I said, "Well, tonight," and I just pulled the name off the top of my head. Well, I didn't, but I had a reason for it. But I said, "Tonight you're like Steve," and I used like a little expletive there. I won't say that. I said, "You're going to be Steve Austin." He said, "Like the $6 million man?" I said, "No, in your case, more like the $6 man. Get your butt out there." and he went out there, and I went out there. I said, "I'm going to see what this kid can do." And I went out there, and man, he was. Let me just say that he needed a lot of work. He needed a lot of seasoning. He wasn't terrible, but he wasn't good. And when he came back, he said, "What didn't you like about my match?" I said, "Well, it would be a lot quicker to tell you what I did like." He said, "Well, what did you like?" I said, "Nothing. You're horrible." I was like Simon Cowell, and I hurt his feelings, really. He said, "What do you mean?" I said, "Listen, blah, 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 blah. You did this and this and this and this and this." He did all these things. I said, "Listen, this is what I want you to do." I said, "I want you to take that chair right over there," and he just happened to be a chair laying up against the wall. And I said, "I want you to take that chair, and I want you to go out there and sit beside that door, and I want you to watch every match tonight and every match tomorrow night and every match to the time you leave here to improve yourself." And he did. He went out there, and later on that night, I actually saw him. This was after intermission, and he wasn't even dressed. Most guys, when they'll go take a shower and get dressed, he didn't even get dressed. He sat beside that door, and he watched the matches, which shocked me because it was actually a wrestler telling him to. You told him to do something, and he actually did it, which shocked the heck out of me. And he did that for 6 months or 8 months the whole time he was there. And that's why Steve Austin today was a success that he is, because he became what I call a serious student of the profession, a serious student of the business, and you saw where it took him.
Definitely. And so he got his name
guy.
from.
And I actually talked to him about 2 weeks ago. He actually called me because he was at the Cauliflower Alley Club, and he was talking to a girl I had down there when I was with the Knockouts. Her name was Raisha Saeed, Melissa Anderson. And they got to talking about me. She gave him my number, and he called me. And we had a great talk. I talked to him about 45 minutes. And he talks the same today as he did back then. One thing I can say about Steve Austin, except for the money, he hasn't changed a bit.
Yeah. Well, he's made an awful lot of money. Has he been sending you any royalty checks from all this?
Hell. None of them sent me nothing. Undertaker didn't send me nothing. Kane didn't send me nothing.
Man.
And those guys, I call it the University of Dutch Alumni Series.
Yes.
Because all these guys actually, and instead of going to a wrestling school, which I have a wrestling school now, by the way, before we leave, but they would ride up and down the road with me, and I would just critique them every night right after the match, which you can't get that in the school now, and that's what I'm saying. That's why the business has changed so much from those days to these days, because I don't think the rapport between the older veterans and WWE and even TNA, it's not the same with these young kids anymore. But I would ride them down the road, and with Undertaker and Kane and Stone Cold, those three guys, and I think that's a pretty good resume on my part.
No doubt about it.
I think I helped them. I didn't make their career, but I dang sure encouraged it strongly.
You certainly did. Each one of those guys has got a chapter in Dutch's book, The World According to Dutch. Fascinating stories about the Kane, The Undertaker, Stone Cold. It's all here in the book. Dutch, before we let you go, tell us again how we can get this book.
Well, just email Dirty Dutch Mantell with 2 L's at gmail.com, and just tell me you want to order the book, and I'll send you the information.
Very good. And tell us about your blog, because it is a very entertaining blog. Tell us about that.
Well, the blog is almost like the book, except I just don't take the stories in the blog and put them in the book. I did a few of them. But that's just DutchMantell.com, and you can find out all the information about me and what I'm doing and how to order the book, and you can just get a good indication of what the book is like.
Yes, sir.
Great stories in the book. Did you like the one about me and Undertaker getting pulled over at gunpoint by the cops in Kentucky?
Hey, that was very good. I thought that was the end of the road for the Undertaker and the Dirty Dutchman.
Oh, no. And then when me and Dundee wrestled in the maximum security prison in Kentucky. Things I will never forget, and there's things that you just don't do every day.
No,
I don't get pulled over every day at gunpoint with a 7-foot guy in the car with me.
That's the truth. None of us do, Dutch. None of us do. That's an amazing story. Wrestling in front of an orchestra with Jeff Jarrett for a PBS special. I mean, this book is full of stuff.
And the thing about that, sometimes I can send people to the YouTube links, and they can go right to it.
Wow.
What about about Snowman? Snowman's a Memphis guy. I love him to death. But man, when I hit him with that chair in Shreveport TV that day, when you go back to the YouTube clip, man, I crown that boy. I hit him hard.
Hey,
Great
Dutch,
guy, though.
No doubt. There's so much we could talk about. Will you please come back and be our guest again on here, man? Because we just scratched the surface on this thing.
I'll tell you what. You just give me a call, and I'll be your guest anytime.
Well, man, it's been an honor to have you today, sir. And thank you again. Thank you for your service. DutchMantell.com. The Dirty Dutchman himself has been our guest. Dutch Mantell, it's been an honor, sir.
Thank you.
You betcha. There he goes. The Dirty Dutchman, Dutch Mantell. Mitchell, that is a legend in Memphis wrestling. That is a legend in wrestling, period. Professional wrestling.
No doubt about that, Craig.
Man.
And what a great storyteller.
Unbelievable.
It sounds to me like, he's talking about sitting on the beach and just writing out his book. Like he had all these stories in his head, and he was just able to put it on paper.
Yeah, like Ernest Hemingway. And honestly, a lot of literary scholars are comparing Dutch Mantell to Ernest Hemingway.
Wow.
Yeah, they are.
That's a good comparison.
It's that good of a book, man. The World According to Dutch. Dutch Mantell's our guest. Hey, hang around. We got a lot more show left, including the John Brady interview at the top of the hour. Stick with us. You're listening to The House with Craig and Mitch on 103.9 The Game.